And now it's time to get a macro perspective on what else is happening around us in the world. To take us to one of the smallest countries in the world, we're now joined by Dr. David Tizzard via Zoom. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Lena. And yes, today we're diving into the unique and fascinating country of Liechtenstein. Nestled between Switzerland and Austria, this tiny alpine nation is known for its picturesque landscapes, rich history, and strong financial sector.
Such diction.
Such chat GPT. That was, I specifically asked, give me an introduction for a radio program. And that's what it said.
All right, which is a fine answer, I guess, to start the conversation, but it's kind of generic. And maybe that shows, for now anyway, the flaws of ChatGPT. To the trained eyes of David Tizzard and Erica Park, they would know if you cheat. All right, let's get started. So not the generic answer, but David's answer, because you go through some rigorous research to give us the most insightful and interesting facts about countries that we weren't paying attention to. Frankly, I couldn't even place Liechtenstein on the map until this morning.
And now you can, and you will realize just placing it on a map that it's one of the few double landlocked countries in the world. Only two. There's Liechtenstein and Uzbekistan, as far as I'm aware, but they're surrounded by other landlocked countries. So if you want to get to the sea, if you want to get to the beach, if you want to get to the coast, you're going through Liechtenstein, then you're going through Switzerland, then you're going through Austria. It's a long way. So Liechtenstein is essentially really in the middle of Europe, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's where it is.
And honestly, if it were any other continent, I would beg the question, what does the trade situation look like? The further you are from those waters, the more expensive trade might be, internationally speaking, but it's part of the EU. So maybe this country's okay.
It is okay. I think some people were mentioning it in the chat, but Liechtenstein is tiny but mighty. It's one of the smallest countries in the world. It's around 62 square miles. The capital city has around 5,000 people, right? Which is incredible. We have apartment blocks with that here in Seoul.
We really do.
Yeah, we really do. But despite its small size, so much money. One of the highest GDPs per person in the world. And much of this is because it's like a tax haven. You know, you hear the stories about sort of Nazis hiding their gold in Switzerland and all of these kind of offshore bank accounts. Liechtenstein built a lot of its early financial success on being a tax haven. However, recently it's trying to shrug that off and become a legitimate financial center of European trade. But yes, very, very rich.
And if you are thinking, maybe I need to move to this country, citizenship is incredibly hard to get.
It is. And you have to live there for 30 years if you want to be considered for citizenship. I've only got 10 more to go if that were to apply here in South Korea. Wow. So you got to live there for 30 years. This is interesting, though. For every year that you live in Liechtenstein under the age of 20, that counts as a double.
Interesting.
So if you lived there from 20 to 30, you still need to do 20 more years. Right. But if you lived there from the age of 10 to 20, you would only need to do 10 more. That 10 period would count as 20. It would count as double. So go there when you're young and you might stand a chance.
It's funny because we need more pressure to do things right when we're young, but get to Liechtenstein faster if you're desiring a citizenship. Now, I thought this was absolutely interesting. Liechtenstein doesn't have its own army.
Exactly. And there are a few countries like that. And you can look at sort of Japan's pacifist constitution, and it's not allowed armies technically, and how that's changing. But the story around Liechtenstein and its army, this is kind of a popular legend. I've been reading all sorts of things trying to work out if this is true. But it's everywhere over the internet, whether it's true or not. Just go with me because it's a nice story. The last time Liechtenstein sent its troops into battle was 1866, and they sent 80 troops into battle. But when the troops returned, they came back with 81 troops because they made friends with an Italian soldier who decided to come back with them. So that story is designed to paint a picture of the Liechtenstein army as A, being very small, B, being not used for the last 150 odd years, and C, being so nice that Italians want to be friends with you and come home.
And get Liechtenstein citizenship. I hope that story is true. I did try to do some fact checking. There's enough sources out there, but I'm not an historian. I like the story, so I'll go with you, David. Now, another story coming out of this region of the world, FIFA president marking 90 years of football in this small country with an anniversary ceremony. Now, you've lost me at FIFA, so go on.
Oh, the Football International Federation Association.
Nice.
Basically, yes, I think. Yeah. Soccer, basically, Lena. It's
Thank
football. I didn't choose this because I'm interested in football. I chose this because this was the story in Liechtenstein the last couple of days, and it's hard to find anything else that's going on in there. But Liechtenstein is marking 90 years of the beautiful game in its country. And to do that, so they began in 1934, and to do that, the president of FIFA, Gianni Infantino, he was there. He was in the capital city. He was giving a speech, and he was there to pay homage and there to celebrate Liechtenstein's football heritage. So that's what they're talking about this week in Liechtenstein.
Okay, now, not to put a damper on things, because they are marking an incredibly important anniversary. 90 years seems significant. I wonder what Liechtenstein's FIFA ranking is. Like, are they a strong football country?
They're terrible.
Okay, so all right. So I was like, did I not get the memo? Okay, all right.
They need more of those Italian people to come back with them. Italians are pretty good at football. Yeah. I generalize and stereotype, but I said they became an official member of the Football Association. That was started in 1934. In 1982, they played their first ever official international match. And that was a defeat. There's currently 210 teams in the FIFA World Rankings. Liechtenstein is 203rd. So they're literally one of the worst teams in the world. They're incredibly rich. If you've seen the photos that I shared of Liechtenstein, it looks like a lovely place. Yeah. They're in the middle of Europe. They just can't play football.
Maybe they have too many distractions.
Yeah, maybe it's just like they're not into it. But and here's another thing. San Marino, a small principality.
Another small principality, right?
Yeah, they're traditionally the worst team in the world.
Okay.
So when I was young, me and my friends, we had these dreams that we would go to San Marino, get citizenship, and play for their international team.
I remember you sharing this. Yes.
Yeah, that was a true story. In last month, San Marino won its first ever official game.
Against who?
Exactly. You know where this is going. They beat Liechtenstein.
Oh, dear.
So, poor Liechtenstein. San Marino get their first ever victory. They've been trying for decades to win a game of football, and they did it. And it was Liechtenstein that they beat. So Liechtenstein football has a long history, long pedigree, and the president's there to celebrate it. But they're just unfortunately not very good. So you can't have everything. You can be rich, you can be picturesque, but you can't be good at everything.
You can't be good at football too. All right. The FIFA president also made a point while he was in Liechtenstein to say that, more support needs to be put towards women's football team in Liechtenstein as well.
Yeah. This is something that I find very interesting. When I read British newspapers now and go to the sports section, women's football is given equal standing to men's football in the newspapers. And so at first it was quite confusing because I'd see stories about Manchester City beat Chelsea and I was like, no, they didn't. And then I will look at it again and I will realize that it's women's football. So in Europe, we're seeing a sea change in how women's football is presented through media, through sports and television, even if the reality of stadium attendances and interest isn't quite there.
Right.
That's genuinely taking place, and with women announcers and co-commentators, etc. Now, we often think of Europe as being sort of, kind of progressive in many ways in terms of gender equality. The women's football, the international women's Liechtenstein team, they debuted in 2021. So finally, they've got a women's football team.
Just 3 years ago.
Just 3 years ago, there's 194 women's official football teams. The Liechtenstein women's team are 187th, so they're kind of doing better than the men, maybe. Just for now, go Liechtenstein women.
All right, but it seems to be the right occasion for the FIFA president to say that we should pay attention to women's football in Liechtenstein and otherwise.
Absolutely. There was a nice quote from the FIFA president in which he said, we can't forget that, and I quote his words, we can't forget that women comprise about 50% of the population, and there is still a lot of work to be done in that area. And he's absolutely correct. Some of you might know that I coach a women's football team here in Seoul, South Korea, and it's amazing to see how these things are changing and what is acceptable hobby for some people. We have these stereotypes and prejudices, but this is all changing, and I think it's a good thing. I would love my Seoul Women's University team to have a game against the Liechtenstein team. There's one for the future.
Thank you so much, David. We'll speak to you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.